Money in the Bank 2024 is in the books, and it is officially SummerSlam season. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I thought a great way to kick off this year's SummerSlam season was to rank the 11 matches at SummerSlam from my favorite wrestler, Bret the Hitman Hart. I did a video kind of like this around WrestleMania time, where Solomonster joined us to rank Bret Hart's WrestleMania matches. Well, I thought I'd fly solo on this one and rank Bret Hart's SummerSlam matches because many people consider Bret Hart to be Mr. SummerSlam. Shawn Michaels is Mr. WrestleMania, but I've always believed that Bret Hart is Mr. SummerSlam. Now, Bret has some competition. Brock Lesnar, maybe Randy Orton, The Undertaker, some other names that have had great showings at WWE's usually second biggest pay-per-view of the year. But Bret Hart has some extremely memorable SummerSlam matches, and I love his performances in the WWE for the first, I believe, 10 SummerSlam pay-per-views. And he had some wild ones, man, and that's what we're here to talk about today. If you are watching this, I am currently in Hawaii. I'm on vacation. I'm recording this actually before Money in the Bank even airs, so we don't even know who's going to win that yet. My money is on Drew or Jay. But I wanted to have some content uploaded and released on the channel while I'm gone, while I'm chilling at the beach or at a resort pool right now with a pina colada or a margarita in my hand is what I'm likely doing right now as we speak. But if you're watching this video, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget, please subscribe, like this video, and click that notifications bell. Memberships are open as well. If you are a member, this week we also have 2 members-only videos dropping as well, where Elizabeth has joined me to watch 2 big SummerSlam matches. So I think one of those has probably already been uploaded, and the other one should be released in the next day or 2. I have not yet figured out which days I'm going to be releasing all these videos on, so you will be finding out all together at the same time. So just keep that in your mind for the members. Keep a lookout for those 2 videos that should be hitting the channel this week as well. I will be back on the 16th, so it's probably going to be, another week or so until you see me on here live again, but I will be ready to get back to business and head towards what should be a phenomenal SummerSlam 2024 pay-per-view. I am looking forward to it. But today, we're going to talk about my boy, Bret the Hitman Hart, who had some amazing matches at SummerSlam, and I wanted to break them down here and rank them in terms of my favorites. Now, I'm not ranking these as the matches that I feel are the best. I'm not saying these are the best matches from Bret at SummerSlam to the worst, and this is the list. You can rank the best and worst however you want. These are my favorites. These matches are ranked in order of which I liked them the most. So there's really no wrong answers here. No reason to yell at me or argue with me for having something lower or higher on the list, because it's just my favorites. That's all, and this video is all about fun. So without further ado, let's start ranking these Bret Hart matches at SummerSlam. But before we do, I want to hit you with a couple of stats. Bret Hart has appeared 10 times at SummerSlam, resulting in 11 matches. One year he did wrestle twice. His overall record is 7-4. He is 2-2 in tag team matches and 6-2 in singles matches. He's won 3 championships and lost 1. He has won the tag team titles, the Intercontinental title, and the World Heavyweight title, and he lost the Intercontinental Championship as well at SummerSlam. He had some legendary matches, and he had a couple of stinkers, but his legendary matches, I think, really are what cements Bret's legacy as being Mr. SummerSlam, because he had some epic championship victories at this pay-per-view, and I can't wait to talk about them. But before we get to the good ones, we got to talk about the bad ones, and we're going to start out with number 11, SummerSlam 2010. 14-man elimination match, Team WWE versus Team Nexus. This was Bret Hart's first match at SummerSlam in 13 years. This was that weird time period where he came back in 2010 and hugged it out with Shawn Michaels. He had the WrestleMania match with Vince McMahon, but then they kept him around a little bit. I believe he even won the U.S. title, did he not? But Bret had a really weird kind of deal where whenever he was in the ring, he couldn't take any bumps. It was mostly just delivering offense. You never saw him take any back bumps or anything like that. And even though it was really cool and kind of ironic to see Bret Hart in the WWE and not Shawn Michaels, since Shawn had retired at that year's WrestleMania, it's kind of tough to watch him, even though I'm very pleased as a fan that we did get that closure with him mending fences and coming back to the WWE in 2010. That was all very nice. And it was cool to see Bret getting in the mix here. I mean, when he got in the ring here in this 14-man tag team match, he was pretty intense. He climbed the buckles. He was hammering, punches down on people and delivering his elbows and whatnot. But still, Bret didn't have a whole lot to do with this match because of the age that he was and where he was in his career. And I believe he had one of those insurance deals where he couldn't really take any serious punishment or bumps. So it's really not fair to rank this match any higher than number 11. Now, Bret did technically get the win in this match, but he was disqualified and eliminated when he hit Skip Sheffield, aka Ryback, with the steel chair. And for you members out there, Elizabeth and I just watched this match together, and that video should be uploaded and ready for the members right now. So if you haven't seen that video yet and you are a member, please go check it out. And as a matter of fact, I will drop a link right below in the description for you. And even though there's a lot we could talk about in terms of what went down in that SummerSlam 2000 tag team match, in terms of what Bret Hart did, it's pretty uneventful, and that's why we've ranked this match at number 11. The match that I would have ranked dead last had it not been for that SummerSlam 2010 appearance by Bret Hart would have been SummerSlam 1995. Just a month or two after I graduated high school, Bret Hart has to go into SummerSlam to face a dentist. This was one of the silliest and dumbest storylines WWE had ever done. As a huge Bret Hart fan around 1995, I was frustrated because WWE and Vince was going with Diesel, and I liked Diesel. I had no problem with Diesel. But watching what they were doing to Bret, having him tread water and putting him in these silly feuds with Hakushi and Jerry Lawler and Isaac Yankem and the pirate Jean-Pierre Lafitte, all this crap they were doing with him was just killing time, I guess, until they put him back on the path to the championship. Well, at King of the Ring this year in 1995, Bret wrestled Jerry Lawler in the Kiss My Foot match. Bret beat him and then shoved Jerry Lawler's own foot into his mouth, and Lawler had been not washing his feet for weeks. Just these childish, it's like the diaper match, the Kiss My Foot match. So dumb. But Lawler apparently didn't wash his foot for months, and it was stinky and moldy and gross, and then Bret put Lawler's own foot into Lawler's mouth after he beat him in the Kiss My Foot match at King of the Ring. And that is what prompted Lawler to then go seek out some treatment for his now chronic halitosis and gnarly breath. And he found some ridiculous dentist named Isaac Yankem, who was previously working as Unabomber, I believe, in the USWA or Smoky Mountain, one of the two. And I remember when they were bringing him in, I remember hearing the hotline reports that they were going to bring him in. I was aware of him from the magazines. I had seen pictures of Unabomber. I was aware of his size and how big he was. So I knew that he was going to be the guy to come in as the dentist, but it was just such a silly gimmick right from the word go. I mean, I'm an 18-year-old kid by this point. I'm like, this is stupid. It is so stupid that they're bringing in this Isaac Yankem, and Bret Hart had to wrestle him. Now, it is kind of cool to see Bret Hart and Glenn Jacobs, who would go on to play Kane, have a Hall of Fame career and become one of the greatest big men to ever get in the ring. I might despise Glenn Jacobs as a person and his politics, but I can't deny the dude was fire in the ring, no pun intended, Kane, but he was one of my all-time favorites, and it is kind of cool to see a prime young Glenn Jacobs mixing it up with Bret Hart, but since it was the Isaac Yankem gimmick tied in with the stupid Jerry Lawler shit, it just didn't land, and it was a bummer. Now, a personal memory of mine from this SummerSlam is I did not order it. I watched it on the scramble. I was upstairs in my room. I was just a couple of months away from moving out on my own, but I was still living at home, and I had a little loft over the garage, and I had my Magnavox TV, and I turned it on to the pay-per-view channel, and I just listened to the show. But I tuned in kind of late. I remember turning it on somehow after the Bret and Yankem match. And I don't remember or recall on the card where this match happened, if it was earlier or later. But I tuned in really late. I might have had to work. Maybe that's what it was. I don't remember. But I remember turning it on. The match had already happened. And I hear Doc Hendricks and Vince McMahon talking about it. I remember hearing Doc Hendricks say something like, "I wonder how Bret Hart is." And I'm like, oh my God, what the hell happened to Bret? Did the dentist kill him? I didn't know until probably like the next night on Raw or something. I'm trying to remember. My memory's a little fuzzy. I think it had to have been the next night on Raw where I kind of learned what happened. But when I heard Doc Hendricks say that, I was worried that they ran an injury angle with Bret, or he got injured and knocked out, or something like that, or something really, really bad happened to him and Lawler got revenge. But it wasn't even that bad. Bret and Yankem had a nice little match. Yankum's doing his cane moves off the top rope at the clothesline, all that stuff, and it was fine in the ring, but it was just the match to me was so dumb. That's why I just have never really liked this one. Well, as expected, Jerry the King Lawler did get involved in this, and that caused the disqualification. Bret got the win here over Isaac Yankum via disqualification when Lawler got all involved, and then they tied up Bret in the ropes, like hung his neck in the ropes, like Mick Foley style, like the way Foley lost his ear. Once he gets tied up in the ropes like that, Lawler and Yankum on the outside of the ring are grabbing his feet and kind of pulling on him just to, intensify the choking on his neck, and the referees are trying to break it up, and they finally break it up, and that was the extent of Bret Hart's injuries. Now, something else interesting that happened on the show, backstage right after this, they interviewed Razor Ramon. And when I think it was Todd Pettengill interviewing him or something, and when they're interviewing Razor, they usher in an injured Bret Hart who's selling the choking right in front of the camera shot. And then Razor looks over, he's like, and continues this promo. And I'm like, they did that for a reason. I thought they were setting up maybe a future Bret Hart and Razor Ramon story or something like that. It was very weird for them to do that randomly like that, invade that shot for no reason, unless they were just trying to, play up the fact that Razor doesn't give a shit. He's got a ladder match against his good friend. If he'll shrug off Bret Hart walking by injured, what's going to stop him from, beating the crap out of little scrawny Shawn? Maybe that's the kind of message they were trying to deliver there. But I always thought it was weird that they walked Bret Hart through in front of Razor's camera shot. If you've never seen this, go back and watch SummerSlam 1995. You'll see what I'm talking about. That was the most interesting part about this whole damn match, if you ask me. But Bret versus Yankum, number 10, way, way down on the list of favorites at SummerSlam. Number 9, SummerSlam 1988, Hart Foundation versus Demolition. This was the very first SummerSlam pay-per-view ever. It was in Madison Square Garden, and this is 2 years before the Hart Foundation would face Demolition again at SummerSlam 1990 in much different circumstances in Philadelphia. But here, Demolition were new champs. They beat Strikeforce at WrestleMania, facing here the former champions Hart Foundation, but also a recently turned babyface Hart Foundation, as Bret basically turned babyface at WrestleMania 4 in that battle royal with Bad News. Neidhart kind of followed him after the fact. And then the two of them were trying to eliminate and get Jimmy Hart out of their lives, but Jimmy Hart still owned the contracts to the Hart Foundation, or at least that was what the story was. So Jimmy Hart joined Mr. Fuji at ringside for this match with Demolition defending their championships against the Hart Foundation. Now, still no music yet for Bret Hart and Jim Neidhart. They haven't had their Hart Foundation music created just yet, and I do believe they would break up one more time, or they would kind of separate here in 88-ish and some of 89, and go singles before reuniting and capturing the tags a couple of years later. But Bret and Jim Neidhart, seeing them as baby faces here was kind of cool. And Demolition was at the top of their game at this point, and this was a really, really fun matchup here. Now, the finish wasn't that surprising. Even back then, when I was 11 years old, I wasn't really expecting the Harts to recapture the tag team championships here. And with Jimmy Hart being at ringside, you knew he was going to be involved. And now they had two managers out there to distract the referee, and that's exactly what happened. Fuji got up on the apron to distract the ref. Jimmy Hart hands the megaphone to Axe. Bret has got Smash up in a pile driver position, and Axe comes with the megaphone from behind, wallops Bret with it. He goes down, and Smash is able to pin Bret Hart and get the win for Demolition. So this match was good, but it was really, really early on in Hart Foundation's babyface run, and Demolition was still on top, still strong. They weren't going anywhere, at least yet. So that's why I have this match ranked pretty low on my favorites, because it was a match that the Hart Foundation lost. Another match that they lost was the very next year. SummerSlam 1989 versus the Brainbusters. This is my number 8 match. And the Brainbusters had just won the tag team championships on Saturday night's main event, beating Demolition. One of the very few times that a championship actually changed hands on Saturday night's main event. But the Busters had just won the titles, and the match with the Hart Foundation was signed for SummerSlam before the Brainbusters won the titles. So this was a non-title match. But I didn't really care. What was the coolest thing about this, the takeaway from this, is the fact that you've got Bret and Jim and Tully and Arn. Mwah. My God. I mean, we got to see Bret Hart and Tully Blanchard mix it up a little bit, do a little chain wrestling. That's the type of stuff that'll give you the tingles in your nethers. You know what I mean? So good. So I thought it was cool just to see an NWA mainstay tag team taking on a WWE tag team. That's the way I looked at this here, because Tully and Arn did not stay in the company for very long. Year and a half, something like that. And they were back to WCW and the NWA. So this match is kind of a dream match. This is one that, you know, we never really thought we would get a chance to see, at least in the 80s. So the fact that it was happening here was pretty awesome. And on top of that, you had Tony Schiavone on the call. So it really felt like an interpromotional type of thing. Tony Schiavone and the Brainbusters were both in WWE for a very short time. So you had a WWE tag team, an NWA tag team with an NWA announcer in Tony Schiavone and a WWE announcer in Jesse the Body Ventura. I thought it was very cool and a really fun match. Unfortunately, though, the champions were hot, just like Demolition was the previous year. Hart Foundation was still a tremendous tag team, always were, but really maybe it wasn't quite their time yet. And in a similar finish to the year before with Demolition, Arn Anderson is attempting to pin, or I'm sorry, Bret Hart is attempting to pin Tully Blanchard, and Jim Neidhart gets all tied up with the referee distracting him, and Arn comes in and nails Bret while he's on top of Tully, and then covers Bret, but very intelligently covers his own head so the referee can't tell that he's not the legal man. Very smart, cagey tag team wrestling from a good heel tag team. I actually like that. Hate seeing Bret lose. Hate even worse seeing Bret get pinned, but also love good tag team wrestling between two great tag teams, and that's what this was. And of course, the last 2 years, the Hart Foundation were protected. Both heel teams had to cheat to beat them, so I guess things could be worse, and the Busters won this match, and they would go on to keep the tag team titles for a couple of months before eventually dropping them back to the Demolition. Number 7 and number 6 are going to be from the same show, but they're going to be reversed. My 7th favorite Bret Hart match at SummerSlam was 1993 versus Jerry Lawler. Now, this was actually the second match he worked on this card, because he was supposed to work with Jerry Lawler to blow off the whole King of the Ring thing. So 2 years earlier, before the Kiss My Foot and Isaac Yankem stuff, that was when Lawler had first come into the company, attacked Bret when he won the King of the Ring, setting up this feud. And this match was for the undisputed crown. You know, the winner of this match would be declared the undisputed king of the WWE. And Bret Hart was really ready to get his hands on Jerry Lawler and beat the absolute piss out of him. And Lawler knew that. And that's when he comes out in crutches. He comes out in crutches. Bret is already in the ring. You got Owen, you got Bruce, you got family members at ringside ready to get a piece of Lawler. And he's out there in his crutches. And I think Todd came out to interview him, or somebody out there. I think it was Todd. Was Todd around in 93? Anyway, somebody's in the aisleway interviewing Lawler, and he says that the doctors have not cleared him. His life could be in jeopardy if he wrestles, all this nonsense, but he has appointed a replacement to kick Bret Hart's butt. He's appointed a court jester, Doink the Clown. So Doink had to come out first to wrestle Bret. And that's when Lawler revealed that he really wasn't injured. And then Jack Tunney came out and said, Lawler, you have to face Bret Hart or you are banned for life. And that's when Lawler was forced to face Bret Hart here. And this was a really fun match because it was basically Bret just kicking the shit out of Jerry Lawler the whole time. Now, Lawler gets a little bit of offense in here, uses the crutch, wears down Bret a little, who did just have a grueling match against Doink. So Bret was not 100%, having to go in here against someone that he really overmatches anyway, so it really didn't matter, but it was still a fun match to watch Bret Hart lay down a whooping on Lawler. Finally, Bret locks in the sharpshooter. Lawler immediately taps out like the bitch that he is, but Bret Hart won't let go of the hold. He's got the sharpshooter on. At first, it's one referee. Then Danny Davis comes in to try to reunite with Bret, talk some sense into his former stablemate, and then the rest of the officials are out there. You see Rene Goulet and I think Strongbow, and everybody's out there trying to pull Bret Hart off of Jerry Lawler. Finally, when they do, the referee decides, who I think the referee in this match was Bill Alfonso, if I'm not mistaken. The referee makes the decision to reverse the decision and declare Jerry Lawler the winner via disqualification, I guess. And now he is the undisputed king of the WWE. They wheel Lawler out on a stretcher and he's raising his hand like he's the winner. It was great stuff. I mean, even with Bret losing, I didn't care. I thought maybe at the time they weren't sure if they were going to do the King of the Ring every year. So they didn't want to have King Bret and King Lawler. So this was a match and a finish that was done to give Lawler back the King gimmick, which he never really lost or was about to give up anyway. And the match was fun, and it was cool to see Lawler get his. All the brothers got involved. Bret Hart cut a promo after the match, kind of laughing about the whole thing. So he really wasn't that broken up about the loss because he definitely got his revenge on Lawler and he beat the shit out of him. But it is kind of weird and silly, I think, sometimes how WWE just changes the rules or moves the goalposts to fit whatever they're doing. Time and time again, we've heard that the referee's decision is final and nothing can be done once the decision is made. But here, it appears like the referee punished Bret Hart. I mean, is this within the referee's guidelines? If a team in the Major League Baseball celebrates too much after a home run, do you take away the home run and give the game to the other team? No, you don't do that. So I feel like it was kind of a weird way to do this, but the image of Lawler kind of raising his own hand as they're wheeling his ass out on the stretcher was pretty good, I got to admit. Now, the number 6 match is the match that happened before this. The reason I have these two reversed is because I think the match with Doink was a little bit better than the match with Jerry Lawler. So prior to the match with Jerry Lawler, that Bret got punished and the decision reversed and Lawler won and all of that, he had to face Doink. Because as we said, Lawler came out injured and appointed Doink as the replacement. And Bret and Doink, and at this time Doink was still being played by Matt Bourne, I believe, had a hell of a match. This was a really good match between Bret and Doink. Doink could work. And this was still heel Doink, and heel Doink was the best. That music, you know, just his mannerisms. I cannot believe they did not run with this gimmick longer on the heel Doink because it was terrific. It was so good. And Bret and Doink had a hell of a match. Really, really fun match between these two. And of course, Bret Hart is going to win this match. He puts the sharpshooter on Doink. Before Doink can tap out, Lawler comes in from behind and nails Bret with the crutches, revealing that he's not injured at all. And he just starts wailing away on Bret with the crutches, working him over well. And then as Lawler is leaving the ring, that's when Jack Tunney shows up and forces him to get in the ring to face Bret. So Lawler and Bret is my number 7 match at SummerSlam, and Doink and Bret is my number 6 match at SummerSlam. Number 5, SummerSlam 1997, Bret Hart versus Undertaker for the WWE Championship. I would like to have this match higher on the list, but I really can't. I really, really enjoyed, number 1, seeing Bret Hart win the championship again for a 5th time in 1997. I was consumed by the USA and Canada feud. It was one of my favorite angles, one of my favorite time periods in pro wrestling was the summer of 1997. WWE was really picking up steam. WCW was still kicking ass, but WWE had found something that was working. They found this Hart Foundation versus USA feud, or Canada versus USA feud, or Hart Foundation versus WWE feud. And it resulted in some really, really heavy fan reaction from a lot of these towns and cities. They were going in, they were seeing more sellouts, and it was just a fun time to be a wrestling fan. And this was all tying in with a lot of other stuff going on in WWE, like Bret and Shawn getting a legitimate shoot fight the night after King of the Ring in the locker room and Shawn leaving. And then Shawn, after you think he's gone for good, he's going to WCW, unsafe working environment, and he wants out. He suddenly shows back up on Raw one week. That might have been the show they were in, Halifax or whatever. I don't remember. And announces that he's going to be the referee for the Bret Hart and Undertaker match at SummerSlam. So something happened during that time after the shoot fight. And then Shawn, you think he's gone for good. And then he comes back and works with Bret. I've always speculated that some secret meeting happened with Shawn and Vince just said, Shawn, give me some time and I'll get Bret out. Come back, and I promise you, I'll get him out of here. I think that's what happened, because for Shawn to have such a crazy change in tune, showing up at house shows wearing outsider shirts, you know, wanting to leave to go to WCW after the fight with Bret, and then all of a sudden he's back ready to do business. something happened there. I think that was a big part, another part of why Vince McMahon on that Madison Square Garden Raw about a month after the SummerSlam show told Bret Hart that he didn't want to fulfill his contract anymore. I think maybe Shawn knew that Bret was going to be on his way out, and that's when he came back. So you had that factor of the real-life Bret and Shawn issue, and now Shawn's going to be the referee for this match. Undertaker, of course, won the title at WrestleMania 13. And I was ready to see Bret Hart win the title back. I had predicted him to. I felt like he was going to. It fit what they were doing with the Hart Foundation faction. It only made sense to put the title back on Bret. And that's what they did here. The match itself, I feel like, was long and a little bit drawn out. This whole entire match to me was about the finish, and the finish was tremendous because they had a couple of stipulations in this match. Shawn Michaels being the referee, the fear was that he would not be impartial. So they made two rulings here. Bret Hart announced that if he did not beat The Undertaker for the title, that he would never wrestle again on United States soil, which is a weird stipulation. The counter stipulation to ensure that Shawn Michaels called it down the middle was that he would be facing the same stipulation. So if Shawn Michaels did not call this match down the middle, then he also would not be able to wrestle again in the United States. Well, where this all falls apart is in the finish. The finish sees Bret and Shawn getting into it. Bret's got a chair, I think. Shawn takes the chair away from Bret, won't let him use it. They're jawing at each other. Bret hawks a loogie right in Shawn Michaels' face. He then gets pissed, grabs the chair, swings at Bret, who then ducks. The chair hits Undertaker. Undertaker goes down like a ton of bricks. Bret covers Undertaker, and then Shawn Michaels is now faced with the dilemma, oh, I have to count, don't I? And he gets down on the mat, and it was great. The way he counted and the way he was making eye contact with Bret the whole time, it was like he knew, it was like, fucking son of a bitch, damn it. And when that 3 count came down, he slid out of the ring, pissed off, dejected, mad at himself for what he had to do, and mad at himself for what he did. My only question here is the stipulation is that if Shawn doesn't call it down the middle, then he can't wrestle in the United States. Well, I think it's pretty safe to say that if you try to hit one of the participants in the match with a chair, you are not calling it down the middle. So the count shouldn't have even mattered. The fact that he swung the chair should have kicked in that stipulation, and Shawn cannot now wrestle in the US because he did not call it down the middle. So it was weird how Shawn felt forced to count 3, and I do like the story and it all makes sense and stuff with it going that way, but I feel like the act of swinging the chair was, kind of what should have done him in there. But he counts the 3. Bret Hart wins the title. Seeing Bret hold the Winged Eagle title for the final time was pretty awesome. He would only hold the title for a couple of months, but it was very cool to see him win that again at SummerSlam. At that time, I was still in ignorant bliss land. I had no idea that Bret Hart's days in WWE were numbered. I had no idea that the next month Vince was going to tell him that he wanted out of the contract and all that nonsense. And I was thinking that Bret Hart's legacy in WWE and Hart Foundations and the Hart Foundation factions run in the company was as strong as ever. And just a short time later, it would severely crumble. Brian Pillman would pass away, then the screw job, then everybody going off to WCW and Owen being left in the dust. And it was a mess. But things and times were still happy the night of SummerSlam 1997. And I think another interesting thing to note about that match, too, is that Shawn, by doing that, would effectively turn him heel. And there's a shot in Wrestling with Shadows where Bret Hart, it's like prior to a Raw or something, and Bret's in the ring with Pat Patterson. He's mic'd. And Pat's asking him, do you know what kind of finish you're going to do at SummerSlam? And Bret's like, all I know is Shawn's costing Taker the match somehow. And he asks Pat, he's like, is Shawn going to be a heel then? And Pat's like, I guess. And Bret's like, it's like he's going to scoop my heat. And that's really what happened. That's why I think something happened between that fight in Hartford with Bret and Shawn backstage. And then when Shawn came back, Vince called him or something and assured him that he was going to push Bret out and Shawn would stay because Vince was probably looking out for his company. Shawn's younger, than Bret. He can maybe get more miles out of Shawn, but that would all collapse too because just a few months after that, Shawn would do the job to Austin at Mania, and then he'd be gone for 4 years. So times were weird. Times were good in 1997, but things were about to drastically change. Think about where we were in the summer of 1997 in WWE, and then think about what the summer of 1998 looked like in WWE. It's two different companies. So much changed in that year. It's wild. But SummerSlam 1997, Bret Hart versus Undertaker is my 5th favorite Bret Hart match at SummerSlam. Number 4, Bret Hart versus Davey Boy Smith, Intercontinental title match, SummerSlam 1992. Of course, we know this one was in Wembley Stadium. Some 80,000 people were in attendance for this show to see Bret Hart and the British Bulldog main event the show for the Intercontinental Championship. Macho Man Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior also battled for the WWE title on this show, but that happened on the undercard. They were giving the main event to Bret Hart and the British Bulldog. We've talked about this match time and time again. The setting, Wembley Stadium, British Bulldog in his own backyard, hometown favorite here. Diana in the crowd watching this thing. The crowd was extremely jacked for this whole match, and it was a very, very good match. But I think Bret Hart and Davey's match at In Your House 3 years later in 1995 in December is a better match than this, or at least I enjoyed it better, I should say. And even though this match was very good, when you hear Bret Hart tell stories about how Davey really wasn't himself, he wasn't in good shape, he was smoking crack with Jim Neidhart the previous week, he was forgetting half the match, Bret Hart has told these stories before. Now, the match still comes off great, and it's still very good, but you wonder if Bret Hart is actually being truthful here and Davey really wasn't himself, how good this match would have been if he was himself. So even though it's regarded as one of the best and most memorable matches in SummerSlam history, and it's only my 4th favorite in SummerSlam history. And of course, Bret Hart would take the L here. Sunset flip spot in the middle of the ring. Davey capitalizes, folds Bret over. 1, 2, 3, very fast count by the ref, and the 80,000 people in Wembley Stadium absolutely explode. It's one of the best 3-count pops you will ever see in this business's 120-plus year history. It was wild, and it was crazy, and it was a great moment for Davey Boy Smith. Bret Hart dropping the title to him, having his sister in the ring, the celebration, and this was Bret's way to show Vince McMahon that he could be world champion. And it was only about a month or so later that he would beat Ric Flair in Saskatoon, right there behind my back on Smack 'em Whack 'em, one of those VHS tapes back there, and beats Ric Flair and wins the WWE Championship just several weeks after dropping the IC title to Davey at SummerSlam. So Bret versus Davey is my number 4 match. Number 3, man, it was really hard to not put this match higher, but I think it's got to be number 3. SummerSlam 1990, Demolition defending the WWE Tag Team titles against the Hart Foundation in a 2 out of 3 falls match. This match was so fun. It's one of my fondest SummerSlam memories. I did order the pay-per-view this year. I remember this show very well because my parents ordered it for me, and it aired the night before the first day of school. Now, the first day of school at the end of the summer is usually as a kid, was my least favorite day of the year. I was always very depressed. I lived for summertime. I loved summer. I loved being off from school. I loved hanging out with my friends. I loved going to the pool. I loved the freedom. I loved flirting with girls and all that stuff that went along with being a teenager back in these days. So this was a bittersweet night for me. On one hand, I was very excited for the show and I had a great time watching it. On the other hand, I had to go to fucking school the next day and I did not want to do that. I was probably starting, I don't know, 7th grade, something like that. Sucked. So I remember that so fondly, and I remember being the only one up. Like, everybody went to bed, and I was like by myself watching the show when it was up to me to go to bed and be up on time for the school bus the next morning, or however the hell I was getting to school back then. So I'll always remember that about this show. But this particular match was all kinds of fun. Now, Demolition had just regained and three-peated, beating Colossal Connection for the titles at WrestleMania 6 as babyfaces. And then right after that, with no warning whatsoever on television, they just decide to go heel in an interview where they shit on the audience and they start talking smack. And then they bring in, for some reason, their third member. Crush. So now it's Axe, Smash, and Crush. And as a kid, I'm completely confused. I have no idea why they're doing this. Now, the backstory is that Bill Eadie, his health was declining, and they were going to start phasing him out and replacing him with Crush. But I might have just disbanded the whole team if Bill Eadie wasn't going to be in it, because as we would see, as soon as Crush got there, it was all downhill, and the team was a joke and a shell of itself here after this match. But they were still pretty strong going into SummerSlam, even though they were now a Freebird deal, a three-man crew, where any of the three could defend the tag team championships. So I think Crush, well, he's not the only one. It's happened with the women. But there have been a very small amount of people who have actually come into the company and be a champion from the moment they walk in. and Crush is one of them. Never even appeared in the company before. All of a sudden, he's a tag team champion. Don't know how that works, but it worked here in 1990. And the rule here, or the stipulation in this match, this 2 out of 3 falls match, is that only 2 members of Demolition would be allowed at ringside. So one had to stay behind. So it turned out to be Axe and Crush taking on Bret and Jim. As we know, Bill Eadie was starting to, I guess, decline in physical health a little bit. Now, another great thing that I remember about this match was the atmosphere. It was a great atmosphere. It was in the Philadelphia Spectrum. It was a little smaller building than the one in Philly now. And for some reason this night, watching it on TV, I wasn't in the arena or anything like that, but I watched it on TV and I felt like I could feel what it was like in the arena. There was something about the energy. You know how they're always like, you can cut it with a knife? It looked like that. It was, just small, and the crowd was, sold out. They were jacked. It was a hot summer night. And there was just something about the vibe that just felt hot. Just felt very hot, very wild, very great energy. And I loved the atmosphere in the building that night. It was great for Kerry Von Erich beating Mr. Perfect. It was great for this match. And it would be great for the main event. Great steel cage match between Ravishing Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior to close the show. Hogan and Earthquake was way more fun than it should have been. So this was a great, great card. And this match really made the show for me, because as a fan, we talked about the other 2 SummerSlams. I didn't really feel like Demolition was going to win in 88 or 89, but I definitely felt like they were going to take the titles here. They had made their intentions known all the way back at WrestleMania. Months earlier, calling out the winners of Colossal Connection and Demolition. We want you. So now they're getting the match at SummerSlam, and this was going to be it. Now, we had Roddy Piper and Vince McMahon on the call for this. They're another big piece of this match really being a favorite of mine, because they were all over the place. Piper is kind of filling in for Jesse, who had just left, so he's kind of playing the role of a heel, and he's all over the place with his energy here. And the Hart Foundation actually drop the first fall to Demolition. I think they get hit with their finisher, and Bret gets pinned again. So 3 straight SummerSlams in a row, Bret Hart gets pinned. They win the second fall via disqualification. I think Smash dives and attacks the referee, stopping him from counting 3. Referee has no choice but to call for the bell and disqualify Demolition. And now it's tied up 1 fall apiece. And that is where, when the referee's back is turned, we had Axe showing up to the ring. He shows up and climbs under the ring. And the announcers see him go under there. Vince is like, that's Axe. He's underneath the ring. Then later on, Smash gets thrown out of the ring. He switches places with Axe, who comes in and just starts beating the hell out of Bret Hart because he's fresh and just kicking his ass. And Vince is freaking out. That's Axe in there. And it was weird. You knew they were going to do this because during the entrances, they kept, or at least Vince kept hammering home how much Axe and Smash looked alike. And we've always known that. We've seen Demolition, on TV for years. It's not like we're not aware of this fact, but they were really hammering that home here. So you kind of had a feeling some sort of shenanigans was going to go down. And now Axe gets in the ring. And all of that work Vince did about how much they look alike is now able to explain to the audience why the referee doesn't seem to notice that it's Axe in there. And even though they're the same size, they don't look that much alike. Smash is a lot darker, tan than Axe. Smash has long hair. Axe has short. Smash has been in the match with his makeup worn off. Axe is fresh. How fucking blind is this referee? But he allows it to continue. Axe gets in there, and then they throw Bret Hart on the outside of the ring. Now Smash comes out from underneath the ring, and they're double teaming Bret, Axe, and Smash while Crush is in the ring. And Vince doesn't know what's going on. And Piper is like, who is in the ring? Smash or axe or smash, and they're double teaming and it's a mess. And that's when the Road Warriors show up. And all of this commotion, you got all three members of Demolition out there. Referee doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And that's when a recently debuting Legion of Doom, Road Warriors, Hawk and Animal show up at ringside, take their shoulder pads off. At this point, I think Axe is now hiding under the ring again. They pull him out and they shove Crush off the top rope, who was about to deliver the elbow finisher to the Hart Foundation in the ring. LOD comes down to figure it all out. They expose the third Demolition member. They shove Crush off the top rope. And as the referee is trying to get everybody out of the ring and off to the back, the Hart Foundation stay poised. They stay focused. They know where they are. They come up from behind. Bret and a little schoolboy behind Crush. Jim comes in with a slingshot shoulder tackle, knocking Crush over Bret Hart. Bret rolls him up 1, 2, and just like SummerSlam 1992, it's one of the best reactions to a 3 count that I've ever seen. It was so amazing. The 3 count, the fans went nuts. It was such an exciting, wild, chaotic finish that concluded with the baby faces, with the good guys keeping their heads together, capitalizing on the chaos, pinning the most inexperienced member of Demolition, Crush, and winning now the tag team championships for the second time. It took them nearly 3 years, 2 years to get back to those championships. Over 2 years to get back to those titles and winning them now as baby faces. They had the music by this point. They came out in the pink jackets, I think, for the first time. It was so good watching them celebrate. Bret Hart is broken and beaten on the mat, and Jim is like kind of covering him to protect him, but he's also laughing. Yeah, we just won the titles. He does that Jim on Neidhart laugh. It was so good. And then if that wasn't wonderful enough, they give you the most delicious cherry on top in the post-match interview afterwards in the back with Mean Gene Okerlund. It's the Hart Foundation and the Road Warriors celebrating together. Hearts have got the belts. Mean Gene in between all of these Hall of Famers, arguably the 2 greatest fucking tag teams to ever exist, right there in one screenshot. It was great. It was so awesome. One of my favorite SummerSlam memories of all time. 1990, Hart Foundation winning the tag team titles from Demolition. Oof, the match is just so good. Go watch it if you've never seen it. Number 2, SummerSlam 1994, Bret Hart versus Owen Hart in a steel cage. This was the kind of the blow off of the summertime feud these two had, even though they would go on to feud for many, many months to come. Owen Hart, of course, scored the big upset win over Bret Hart in the opening match of WrestleMania 10 at Madison Square Garden, one of the most beautiful one-on-one matches you will ever see in your life. Bret Hart, of course, later that night would go on to win the world title in the main event, setting up a fun Owen Hart versus Bret Hart summertime program where they would tour the the live show loops and all of that and work their asses off together. And that would culminate here with a big championship opportunity for Owen Hart, because after Owen beat Bret at WrestleMania, he would then go on to win the King of the Ring. So he won the King of the Ring 1 year after his brother did. That got Owen Hart the title shot at SummerSlam against Bret Hart in the steel cage in the United Center. First show in this building. And in 1994, to see WWE draw in a crowd like this was pretty awesome. I loved this match. There was even a time, I could probably still do it, where I had Bret Hart's SummerSlam 1994 promo memorized. I had to do like a memorization exercise for school. And they said you can memorize anything you want, or I forgot what it was. I didn't even have to say it in front of the class, I don't think. You just had to do it. And so I memorized, this is what I chose to memorize. I memorized Bret's backstage promo with Todd Pettengill prior to coming out in this match against Owen Hart. This match was also loaded with Hart family members. You had Stu out there. You had Helen Hart out there. You had all of the brothers, and you had a returning Davey Boy Smith, who was right there with Diana in the front row. Davey, of course, left 2 years earlier after getting let go, I think because of steroids or drug test failure or whatever it was. He went off to WCW for a couple of years, and now he was back. And I was ready for him to come back. I was kind of sniffing him. His name was kind of being mentioned in some of the hotline reports around that time. So I was kind of waiting for the possibility for the Bulldog to come back. And what better time for him to reappear than right here in the front row at the same show where he beat one of the participants in this match 2 years earlier for the Intercontinental title, and it kind of gave the fans a wonder of, oh, whose side would Davey be on? But he was interviewed, as a lot of the Hart family members were, prior to the match right there at ringside, and he says he's got Bret's back, and he loves and supports Bret Hart. Jim Neidhart is also out there looking like a complete asshole. He's in the crowd as well, so they're all there ready to get involved in this match. The United Center crowd was a great setting. That's a great arena. The entrances here were so badass, Bret's in particular. And what I like the most about this match is I'm not really a fan in general of the escape the cage rule. I feel like cage matches are generally designed to blow off a very, very intense battle. Things are going to get bloody. They're going to get violent. And it's the two wrestlers' chance to really, do some damage to one another or get whatever revenge they're seeking or whatever the case may be in whatever respective feud is going on. But in this cage match, the cage had an opposite effect. You had like 25 Hart family members out there, and the cage was more designed to keep the Hart family out than Bret Hart and Owen Hart in. So that's one reason why I was okay with a lot of this match being both guys scrambling to get out of the cage. Mostly Owen, but Bret Hart was doing his fair share of scrambling as well. So I thought that worked really well in this match. Maybe not in every match, but in this one, it fit the story, and it was crazy exciting, especially with the athleticism of both of these guys. Owen being able to climb up that cage so quickly, and have a lot of daring escapes, a lot of close calls. That great superplex spot that we saw from the top, a couple of sharpshooters in the middle of the ring and whatnot, and a really good sequence there at one point where Bret's trying to crawl out the door and Owen is grabbing his legs and Bret's just kicking him as hard as he can, fighting like his life is on the line to get away from Owen Hart, and then finally says, fuck it, comes back in the ring, mounts him, and just rains like 10 vicious punches to his face. And it was just good stuff all around. The finish would see Owen and Bret both up on the top of the cage. Owen starts coming down, and this was a practiced finish. Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels did this a couple of years before on a Coliseum video. You know how Bret and Shawn had that ladder match on a Coliseum video that was kind of like the first WWE ladder match, and it was basically just like a walkthrough of what a ladder match is? Well, they also had a cage match on one of those Coliseum videos as well, where they did this finish where Shawn got hung up upside down on the cage and Bret dropped down and won. They recycled it here for Owen Hart, where he's coming through. You can see him positioning his foot through the bar and in the ropes, and then Bret smashes his face on the cage. Owen falls backwards, but he's hanging upside down on the side of the cage, allowing Bret to drop down and win the match. And as soon as Bret wins and the crowd cheers, Neidhart immediately jumps over the barricade. He clotheslines Davey and Diana over the barricade into the ringside area. Then Owen and Davey take Bret Hart in the ring. They bring him in the cage. Neidhart struggles, but he eventually padlocks the cage door, and they start wearing out Bret in the ring, just beating the shit out of him with no way to get in. So the Hart brothers are now jumping the barricade. They're trying to climb up the cage, 3 or 4 of them trying to get in, and they keep getting knocked down by Owen or Davey. And that's finally when Owen or Jim. And then finally Davey, the Bulldog on the outside of the ring, he finally just gets pissed, tears off his shirt, starts climbing up the cage really aggressively. He's able to get in the cage and save Bret as the heels run away and leave. And Bret Hart, even though he was the winner, had another post-match beatdown, which seems like it's a theme. Even when he wins the WWE title, remember in '95 when he beat Diesel at Survivor Series? Got his ass kicked after that match too. Seems to be a theme. And then the King of the Ring, when he won the King of the Ring, Lawler comes out and attacks him. What is it about that? About Bret Hart always getting attacked after he wins a match? Why do they always do that to my boy? I don't know, but great match with Owen. One of my all-time favorite just memories. SummerSlam, blue bar cage, Bret Hart, Owen. What the fuck else do you want in life, man? You know? And that leaves us to our number 1 match. SummerSlam, 1991, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental Championship. This is my favorite Bret Hart SummerSlam match of all time, and probably my favorite Bret Hart match of all time. The one with Austin is up there too at Mania 13, but this one, a lot of my favorites are always dictated by my personal memories of them. And I have great memories about this one because at the time, I was a little bit pessimistic about Bret Hart. I was a fan of his, but in my head, in my mind, I didn't see him. I certainly thought he was good enough to be a champion. I just didn't see WWE making him a champion. So when they made this match, Bret Hart versus Mr. Perfect for the Intercontinental title, I've already seen Bret Hart wrestle Mr. Perfect a bunch of times, and Bret Hart loses every time. I wasn't expecting him to win the Intercontinental title. This match really wasn't even on my radar very much because I was more focused on what else they were doing on the show. I thought this was just going to be another win for Mr. Perfect. I just had a bad attitude about it. And I'm like, Bret's not going to win this. So when you watch the match and then you see how good it is, and it wasn't dawning on me at the time that Perfect was injured or he was on his way out. They'd even brought in John Tolis to be the coach, remember? And take over for Bobby Heenan. All of that should have been, warning signs that Perfect is on the verge or the cusp of dropping the Intercontinental title here. But based on how Bret was treated as a singles prior to this, I didn't have really high hopes for him. So I was as surprised as ever, as not only did Bret win this match, but he was being pretty dominant and assertive throughout the whole thing. Every one of Bret Hart's moves were as good as they ever looked. The second rope elbow, delicious. Side Russian leg sweep. Gorgeous backbreakers. Absolutely immaculate fucking vertical suplex. Everything he was doing was perfect, 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 perfect. No pun intended to Mr. Perfect, or no offense to Mr. Perfect, but Bret was being perfect in this match. And Curt Hennig was injured. Props to him for going through with this match with a bad back and for the match to be so good given the shape that his back was in. I don't know what was going on with his hair and why he decided to cut it and have that big white afro Richard Simmons thing going on during this match. That took away from it a little bit. But overall, I'm always really grateful looking back to how Curt Hennig was so professional that he wanted to get this match done because he remembered all the things Bret did for him when it was time to make him. When Perfect was on top and he was on the rise, he was beating Bret Hart a lot, and now he had the chance to repay that favor, and he was going to go into the ring that night to repay that favor, even if he had a bad back, and that's why Mr. Perfect is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. But I loved the setup here with Perfect and Bret. Finally, when Bret has got the sharpshooter on Perfect, the coach jumps up to get involved, and then Bret decks him, and that's when Perfect takes over, and it feels like he's going to, polish Bret off here. He got the little interference from coach that he needed, and he starts setting up all these moves where he's dropping the leg on Bret's crotch. And earlier, Bret was like sweeping Perfect's legs, and he was doing like those 360s. All that was so good. Perfect was such a good seller. You see a lot of Perfect selling in Dolph Ziggler, years later, and the way Perfect was so light on his feet and the way he could sell for someone was just unmatched. I mean, it really, really was. And when Perfect had gotten that distraction from coach, he lifts up Bret's legs and he's kind of like dropping the leg on the crotch like they do, where he goes for a couple of those. I think he goes for the third one. And when he comes down, Bret just grabs his foot. He grabs his leg, he grabs it, he grapevines it, he rolls him over into sharpshooter position. And the minute he leans back and cinches up, the referee calls for the bell. There was no time for Mr. Perfect to think about it. They immediately called for the bell because that is a very painful hold. Wrestling might be fake, but that shit fucking hurts. And if you've got a bad back, you do not want to have it bent the opposite way like that. And the fact that Bret was able to cinch back so far on that, it looked really good. It was a hell of a lot better than Sting's Scorpion Deathlock, I'll tell you that. And the fact that they protected Curt as well as they could, called for the bell, or he submitted right away, minimizing, the stress and the pressure on his back. I thought that match could not have gone better for someone who was injured going into that. If you wanted to have this executed to put Bret over and launch him as a singles champion now, and a credible singles champion, because at the time I was always looking at Bret as a singles star anyway, as kind of a mid-carder. The fact that he won the second biggest title in the company here was mind-blowing to me and super, super exciting. And that's when I could be fully out of the closet, because at that point it was pointless to be a Bret Hart fan because he wasn't really winning much. But now it's like, holy shit. And just a year later, this guy would be world champion. And I'm so glad that I saw that in him. I saw that in him when he was still in the tag teams. I was always very attracted to Bret as a performer. But I never, he wasn't my favorite of all time at that point because he wasn't doing anything. He was a mid-card level guy. So the fact that he started making it here, I was like, I knew my 10-year-old self was smart. I knew shit. I knew this guy had it. So it was almost like validation. At this point, I would have been 14 years old, and it was validation that, hey, wait a minute, I actually do know what I was talking about. I knew this guy was good, and I was so happy to see him win the title, the way he tore off Mr. Perfect's tights and gear after the match and carried him around as a trophy was pretty good. Hilarious post-match interview with Stu Hart and Alfred Hayes, where Stu's not even given a chance to really speak, which was also pretty funny after the match. But Bret Hart winning the Intercontinental Championship here at SummerSlam 1991 is my most fondest Bret Hart SummerSlam memory. I love this match. I basically have it memorized. If I were to watch it, I could probably say every line of commentary dialogue. I've watched this match many, many times, and it ranks as my #1 favorite Bret Hart match at SummerSlam of all time. And that concludes our list. So thank you so much for being here and watching this video with me today. Let me know what your favorites are. Do you have a different favorite? Which Bret Hart match is your favorite? You can even rank them all if you want in the comments below. Please let us know about that. I would love to read some of that while I'm on vacation out here in Hawaii. So thank you very much for joining us today. Long live Bret Hart at SummerSlam. I will catch you guys back here on the channel very, very soon. And if you are a member, don't forget to check out those member-only videos that have dropped this week as well. You guys have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.